Governor, I want to start with you because I've always told people about a conversation we had. I think a conversation we had around the 2020 election where you said, I was talking to Donald Trump in March, April, and already back then, he was starting to play the game because he knew he was going to probably lose. And he started planting in your mind and other people's minds around him, this election's going to be rigged. This election's going to be rigged because he knew he was going to lose. This is deja vu all over again, isn't it? In the words of Yogi Berra.
Well, he thinks in one respect, guys, it worked for him then because we're still having folks who believe that argue about the 2020 election today. Over 5 years later. And, you know, he also, the other thing he did is kind of interesting, building off the point you were making, Joe, is that, you know, he says, well, the write-in votes and these late votes don't go his way. Let me tell you one of the reasons they don't go his way. Because back in 2020, when mail-in voting became more broadly available because of COVID, he repeatedly said over and over again to his supporters, don't vote by mail. It's crooked, it's rigged. Don't vote by mail. And I can tell you that myself and other people around him kept saying, don't say that. A lot of your voters are seniors who are going to be afraid to go out to the poll because they're afraid to catch COVID. And so if they won't vote by mail because you say it's crooked, and the only people who do vote by mail are people who are voting against you, those numbers are going to be even worse. And I think that's a disease that still hasn't been corrected inside the Republican Party, that we still get smashed as Republicans on mail-in voting in part, and I think large part, because Donald Trump conditioned a large section of our voters to think that their votes wouldn't be counted. And so what I would say to him on that front is, Doctor, heal thyself. You know, you caused a lot of this problem, and now you're trying to fix it by saying, doubling down on the idea that elections are going to be rigged, and rigged in part because of mail-in voting, which just, you know, it doesn't match the facts.
Chris, I don't know about you, but when I ran my 4 elections, I just absolutely wiped out Democrats in absentee voting, in mail-in voting. We focused on that, and we crushed Democrats. We always knew we'd win, I don't know, 2-1, 3-1 in early voting. That's why what you're saying makes so little sense. That Republicans are now discouraging people from voting early. I mean, hell, I would get the list of absentee voters overseas. And I would spend my nighttime, because I'm such a loser, I'd spend my nighttime calling them, going, hey, this is Joe Scarborough. Thank you for your service. I would love for you, if you get a chance, when you put your absentee ballot in, da-da-da. And we had people doing that all the time and focusing on that. And the fact that they're discouraging early voters just doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't make electoral sense in any way. And so then when it doesn't, and it starts to go the predictable way, then you've got to come up with some other excuse as to why it isn't working for you. Look, in the end, one of the most important things in our country is people's perception of fair and free elections. It doesn't mean that you can always have to agree with the result. Plenty of times I haven't agreed with the result. But the fact is that you have to believe they're free and fair elections. And as you said before, and by the way, Joe, when that graphic came up, I was thinking the same thing you were, like, wow, like MS Now has parchment paper. You know, they're putting this stuff on. Like, this is the real deal, man. Yes. The parchment paper thing is serious, right?
Classy,
like, I wouldn't have necessarily believed it if you had just put a regular graphic up there. Exactly. But when you rip the parchment paper out, man, this is serious stuff. And the
TJ
reason
plays ball.
Yes, you know, he and Madison came to play on that Constitution thing. And the other thing I'd say to you is to remind the president that the states are not an agent of the federal government. In fact, one of the things that was really argued about in the Constitution was the independent role of the states. And we are not agents as governors of the federal government in elections. We are the people placed in charge of the free and fairness of those elections by the Constitution and trusted by the people. So as much as some people might like to be Donald Trump's agent, I don't think the 50 governors see themselves that way.
Governor Christie, great to have you back on the show. Have you on
To
loan
see you,
from your
Willie,
regular
you son
job.
of a gun. Look at you. Unbelievable.
Look at you. Look at you.
Oh, so you never age, Willie. Look at me. I'm old, but you never age. It's incredible.
It's the team in the back. They just somehow they whip us into shape at this hour.
Miracles.
By the way, that parchment, that's the same thing I used to do at George Washington Middle School in Ridgewood, New Jersey. You light it on fire a little on the edges and make it look old. Yeah, we got it all figured out.
It was very nice.
Let me ask you, Governor, going back even a little bit further to your role as a U.S. attorney, we're talking about independence. The states are independent from the federal government. What about the independence of the judiciary under Pam Bondi as Attorney General? And we heard so much in the Biden administration from Republicans about the weaponization of government, the weaponization of the Justice Department. We're just seeing it out in the open. So how do we repair what's happening right now at some point down the line where you have a Justice Department just acting at the direction of the executive branch?
Well, Willie, look, this is the thing that of everything that's happened over the last year, it's the thing that disturbs me the most and cuts most personally to me. Because I can tell you that in 7 years in the George W. Bush administration, I never once got a call from the Justice Department or the White House, for that matter, about any particular matter they wanted me to investigate or not investigate, someone they wanted me to prosecute or not prosecute. What my boss, John Ashcroft, said to me was, "We're hiring you for your judgment. Don't embarrass us." And that's the only instruction I ever got, was don't embarrass us, follow the law. And so, look, Willie, I think one of the things that may have to be considered by whoever the next president is, Republican or Democrat, is to appoint an attorney general of the opposite party, because we need to restore people's faith in the fact that these judgments are made without regard to partisanship. And I can just tell you, we did 130 political corruption cases when I was U.S. attorney in 7 years. We won all 130 of them, and they were about 60% Democrat and 40% Republican, because that's about what our state is. And so no one ever thought that we were playing games with the system. And we need to get back to that. And if we don't get back to that, it is the single biggest thing that distinguishes us from every other country in the world, is that we don't have our political apparatus controlling our administration of justice, or at least we didn't until about a year ago.
Hey, Governor Christie, it's great to see you. You're looking great.
Thanks, Michael.
Let me ask you about the national election proposal. Isn't it easier to rig an election? And I think most people think our elections are free and fair. They go and vote and they think it's free and fair. But having one entity, the federal government, running an election, a national election, as opposed to 50 states running their elections, boy, you can see something easily done by putting your finger on the ballot, literally, from the national level and taking care of it, rigging it one time, rather than 50 states doing it in charge.
Well, Mike, look, the founders were really smart on this and many other things. They did not want an all-seeing, all-knowing, all-controlling federal government. They wanted the federal government to do what the federal government had to do for us as a nation, our national defense, and other things that are in the entire national interest. But for everything else, they wanted the states to be the primary place that these things are done. And so elections, again, there are lots of reasons not to do it nationally. You raise one of them, but there are plenty of others, too, as you know. Look, each state has different demography, different populations, different customs surrounding elections. All of those things influence how people view them as being free and fair. And so you need to let the people closest to the people be responsible, because they're the ones that can be held most directly responsible. Believe me, when there was stuff going on when I was governor that people didn't like, I'd be in the dry cleaners, I'd be in the deli, I'd be at my kids' school sporting events, and I'd hear about it. You're president of the United States, you don't do that. You just don't do it.
Yeah.
And so we need people to be held accountable closely, and that's what the founders expressed, and that's what we've been following for nearly 250 years.
Chris, unfortunately, and I know you feel sorry for them, but people that watch our show have to hear my stories every day. I'm glad you, who've also run can tell your story on this issue that you just brought up, when people say, oh, they're going to rig an election, I just start laughing. I say, you know what? In Florida, there's 67 counties. In the congressional district I ran, there were 6 counties, which meant there were 6 supervisor of elections, which meant there were 6 separate voting systems, which meant there were 6 separate fiefdoms. And if you ever thought that the person running Escambia County could somehow link up with a person running Santa Rosa or Okaloosa or you're out of your mind. They'd never do it because they were all so fiercely independent. And then you spread that over a state like Florida that has 67 counties. Like you said, those are 67 different systems. It's impossible to hack that. Could you just underline that as governor of New Jersey and all the counties in that state, how fiercely independent each one of those supervisors of elections were?
Yeah, and look, Joe, in our state, we have a system where the supervisors of the elections in each one of our 21 counties, there are 2 Republicans who oversee it and 2 Democrats at the same time. So when the votes are being counted in the room, there's 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats. And so in our state, you wind up having, 44 of these folks who are in the room and all across the state who are a check on each other. So if anybody's trying to play some games, you got 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats in every room. And by the way, those folks are appointed through the governor by the political parties themselves. And so the fact is that they're very interested in protecting the fairness of the election for the people that their party has put on the ballot. So, look, are we going to have instances from time to time where there are people who do vote who shouldn't vote, or people who vote twice who should only vote once like all of us? Sure. And there are going to be instances of that. But I've never seen in New Jersey a situation where that determined the outcome of an election. And so, in the end, nothing is perfect. So we shouldn't be out here telling people that, no, there's no problems at all. Of course, when, laws are made to try to deter people from preventing crimes, they don't prevent people from committing crimes. And that's why we have prosecutors. And so they hold those people to account through the jury system afterwards. But if you go to any place else in the world, no one runs freer or fairer elections with more partisan balance than the United States. And we should not allow people to talk us off that.
Yeah, because it's the talking us office, I think, that sows some of the discord. First of all, bit of beef, Governor. Only Willie gets the treatment of you look so great and haven't aged at all.
Fair. You look wonderful.
What about, Joe?
Would you put Willie back on the camera for a second?
He's right here.
You put Willie back on the camera for a second, please. Look at this guy.
Governor, I'm not a piece of meat, Governor.
Yes, you are, Willie. You are, you know it, and you love it, and you live it.
Discord in the team.
I mean, it is. I'm not trying to sow discord here, Patty, but let's face it. We all look at him. We know the deal. We get it.